What will happen if we throw one of the most untamed predators in the world against one of the most tangled ecological problems on the planet? What if the honey badger, this small and practically indestructible beast, is capable of becoming a living tool for fighting rabbits, cats, and toads? At first glance, it sounds like a bold and even reasonable solution. But it is exactly such ideas that most often give rise to a new catastrophe. Today, we will break down one of the most dangerous ecological experiments that is seriously being considered as a possible action plan in Australia. Subscribe, it will be interesting. Australia is perhaps the most vulnerable continent on the planet from an ecological perspective. For millions of years, it evolved in complete isolation from the rest of the world. Its animals never encountered large terrestrial predators in the sense that Africa or Eurasia know them. Kangaroos, wombats, koalas and bandicoots, all of them formed in conditions where the main threat was represented by eagles, monitor lizards and marsupial predators, not wolves, cats or rats. It was precisely this isolation that made Australian nature incredibly rich and diverse. But it also turned it into something extremely fragile. When Europeans came to the continent, they brought with them animals that the local nature had never seen before. Some species were introduced intentionally, others got here by accident, and a third group escaped from farms and gardens. All of this launched a process that has not been stopped for more than 200 years. The first and most famous disturbers of the peace were rabbits. In 1859, only 24 rabbits were released into the wild in the state of Victoria for the sake of amateur hunting. 10 years later, they already numbered in the millions. 30 years later, hundreds of millions. Rabbits ate grass, destroyed plant roots, and turned green pastures into dusty wastelands. No other species in human history has spread so rapidly across such a vast space. Following the rabbits, foxes came to the continent. They were also introduced for hunting in the 19th century. Foxes quickly discovered that local wildlife had absolutely no idea how to escape them. Australian animals simply did not know how to behave with such a hunter. In a short time, the fox destroyed a huge number of small marsupials, birds, and reptiles. To this day, it remains one of the main factors in the extinction of local species. Feral cats became a separate tragedy for the continent. Introduced along with the first settlers, they scattered across the country and turned into some of the most successful hunters in Australian history. Today, between 2 and 6 million feral cats live on the continent. Each of them kills up to 1,000 animals a year. They hunt under the cover of night, know how to camouflage themselves perfectly, and reach even the most remote corners of the country. Cane toads appeared in Australia in 1935. They were brought in intentionally to fight beetles that were destroying sugarcane plantations. The toads did not handle the task, but they multiplied in colossal quantities. They turned out to be poisonous to most Australian predators that tried to eat them. Crocodiles, monitor lizards, snakes, and cats died after tasting a cane toad. Today, there are more than 2 billion individuals. Rats and mice, arriving with the first European ships, occupied their niche in cities, on farms, and in forests. They eat bird eggs, attack the young of small marsupials, and destroy crops and grain stores. From time to time, their numbers grow sharply and so-called mouse plagues happen. In 2021, one such plague caused damage to Australian agriculture in the hundreds of millions of dollars. A separate threat is represented by invasive plants, displacing native vegetation and depriving local animals of their habitual habitat. But even among animals, the list of offenders does not end with rabbits and cats. Feral camels, pigs, goats, buffaloes, deer, and horses have taken root on the continent, as well as several species of snakes and fish. All of this creates colossal pressure on the local ecosystem from many sides at once. Australian authorities are not sitting idly by. Billions of dollars are spent annually on the fight against invasive species. Traps, shooting from helicopters, poisons, sterilising baits, and fences hundreds of kilometres long are put into use. One such fence, the Great Rabbit-Proof Fence, stretches for almost 4,000 kilometres through all of Western Australia. But even it could not completely restrain the spread of rabbits. Poisons also do not give a complete result. The most common among them destroy not only rabbits and foxes, but also local predators, birds and marsupials. This is side damage that is extremely difficult to control. Furthermore, some animals over time learn to bypass poison baits, and the effectiveness of poisons gradually decreases. Biological control. Use of natural enemies or diseases against unwanted species. Seems like a more reasonable approach. This was the path taken in the middle of the 20th century, when the myxomatosis virus was used against rabbits. At first, it destroyed up to 90% of the rabbit population. However, rabbits developed a partial immunity, and their numbers began to grow again. Later, another virus was applied, but it didn't become the final solution to the problem. It is against this backdrop that ideas about new predators arise. The logic of reasoning is as follows. Since Australia suffers from many small and medium-sized invasive animals, possibly a predator is needed that will actively hunt them. And one day, authorities seriously thought about bringing the honey badger to the continent. At first glance, this does not seem like madness. The honey badger lives in Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. It is an animal from the weasel family, about the size of a small dog, weighing from 7 to 16 kilograms. But in its fighting qualities, the honey badger has no equal among animals of such size. The Guinness World Records long called it the most fearless animal on Earth. The honey badger almost does not feel pain. Its skin is so thick and tough that most predators can barely bite through it. At the same time, the skin is also very loose, which allows the honey badger to turn around right in the attacker's jaws and bite back. Bee stings, porcupine quill hits, and poisonous snake attacks, the honey badger endures all of this, gets up, and continues its business. The honey badger has developed a special resistance to snake venoms. It regularly hunts African vipers, cobras, and other poisonous reptiles. A bite that would kill a dog or a small predator usually ends in a brief faint for the honey badger, after which it regains consciousness and continues the hunt. It is this property that seems particularly attractive in relation to Australia, where poisonous snakes are in abundance. The honey badger is omnivorous in the widest sense of this word. It eats rodents, birds, reptiles, insects, plant roots, fruits, honey, larvae, and carrion. It knows how to dig burrows with enormous speed, climb trees, and open locked boxes. Its intelligence is considered high for an animal of such size. In captivity, honey badgers have repeatedly demonstrated the ability to solve problems and use primitive tools. Australia is full of animals that the honey badger could theoretically hunt. Rabbits are ideal prey for it in terms of size and habits. Feral rats and mice are as well. Cane toads, resistant to most predators, are not resistant to the honey badger, which is capable of learning to eat them by turning them on their backs and eating the unprotected belly, just as some clever crows and snakes do in Australia. The reasoning in favour of the honey badger usually ends here. But this is exactly where the most interesting and disturbing part begins. Because history already knows how such ventures end. And almost all of these examples end badly. It is enough to remember that the cane toad was also imported with the best of intentions. The first main question arises when analysing this idea is, will the honey badger hunt exactly those animals we need? The answer is almost certainly no. A honey badger hunts what is easier to catch, what is tastier, and what is more accessible at the moment. It does not know that a rabbit in Australia is an invasive species, while a bandicoot, a small local marsupial, is a protected animal on the brink of extinction. Bandicoots, bilbies, quolls, small wallabies, and night parrots, many of them live in burrows or right on the ground, are active at night, and are about the same size as rabbits. To a honey badger, they are indistinguishable from desirable prey. Furthermore, local animals have no experience defending against such a predator. They have never met a honey badger and have not developed instincts that would help them escape. Invasive species, on the contrary, are often much better adapted to survival under predator pressure. Rabbits, rats, foxes, and feral cats have all gone through thousands of years of coexistence with various predators in Eurasia and Africa. They know how to run, hide, multiply at a huge rate, and restore their population after losses. Local Australian animals do not possess these skills to the same extent. This means that the honey badger is highly likely to cause disproportionately large damage precisely to the local fauna, rather than to the species against which it is supposedly directed. The honey badger will start hunting the easiest and most accessible. And what is easy and accessible in Australia are exactly those species that are already under pressure from other invasive predators. Now let us consider the question of reproduction. The honey badger does not have a high rate of reproduction. A female gives birth to 1, occasionally 2 cubs once a year, or even less frequently. It would seem that this is a plus. The honey badger will not multiply as rapidly as a rabbit. But even with slow population growth, over several decades, honey badgers are capable of occupying huge territories, especially in the absence of natural enemies. In Australia, the honey badger would have almost no natural enemies. Dingoes, theoretically, could represent a threat to it, but the honey badger is known for successfully fending off even packs of hyenas and lions in Africa. Large monitor lizards might try their strength, but a honey badger is capable of standing up for itself against most reptiles. Wedge-tailed eagles, Australia's largest birds of prey, may occasionally attack young individuals, but an adult honey badger is practically invulnerable from the air. The absence of natural enemies is exactly what turns the rabbit, fox, and cat into a real disaster for Australia. The honey badger will find itself in the same situation. It will multiply, albeit slowly, expand its territory, adapt to local conditions, and gradually occupy new ecological niches. In a few generations, it will no longer be a control instrument, but a new, full-fledged inhabitant that no one invited, and that will now have to be controlled itself. Climate in the Australian landscape should also be taken into account. The honey badger comes from the arid regions of Africa and South Asia. Australian deserts and semi-deserts, which occupy most of the continent, are quite suitable for its existence. By climatic conditions, the honey badger is well adapted to heat, lack of water, and a meagre food base. It is this that makes it a particularly dangerous candidate for the role of a new invasive species in Australian conditions. Let us imagine a short-term scenario. The first years after the introduction of honey badgers might really look encouraging. The animals will begin to hunt rabbits, rats, and mice. In separate areas, the number of rodents may noticeably decrease. Farmers in some regions may notice a reduction in crop losses. All of this creates an illusion of success and feeds the conviction that the experiment is working. But by the second or third year, the situation will begin to change. Honey badgers, having quickly mastered the territory, will begin to face competition, both with each other and with other predators. Stronger individuals will take the best hunting grounds. Weaker ones will be forced to look for new prey. And it is at this very moment that local species, which do not know how to escape an unfamiliar predator, will begin to suffer. In the third year, or shortly thereafter, reports will begin incoming about honey badger attacks on domestic animals. on chickens and geese on farms, and on small domestic dogs. The honey badger does not feel fear before a human. In Africa, cases are known where honey badgers penetrated chicken coops, sheds, and even residential buildings in search of food. In Australia, where many farms are located far from cities, this will turn into a serious problem. The question of the honey badger interaction with poisonous Australian snakes deserves separate attention. On the one hand, the honey badger is resistant to their venom and is capable of hunting them. This seems like a plus, as some invasive snakes, such as the brown snake, have become very numerous. But on the other hand, Australian snakes are a part of the local ecosystem, and a sharp reduction in their numbers will disrupt food chains. Snakes in Australia regulate the numbers of small rodents, lizards, and frogs. If the honey badger begins to actively hunt snakes, this will lead to an increase in the number of those very rodents from which Australia is already suffering. Thus, the honey badger can simultaneously put pressure on rabbits on one side and indirectly contribute to the growth of the rat and mouse population on the other by destroying their natural regulators. One must not forget about the influence of the honey badger on birds. It destroys nests, reaches eggs and chicks, and knows perfectly how to climb trees. Australia is known for its richest diversity of birds, many of which nest on the ground or in low bushes. Species such as the night parrot, ground parrot, and scrub fowl will turn out to be extremely vulnerable before the honey badger. This is another risk group that supporters of such ideas rarely think about. There is another aspect that is usually missed in such reasonings. The honey badger actively digs burrows, at times very deep and branched. It destroys the soil cover, disrupts plant root systems, and changes the structure of the soil. In the arid regions of Australia, where the soil is already suffering from erosion due to rabbits and other burrowing animals, the appearance of another active burrower may accelerate land degradation. Suppose that after 5 or 7 years, the government realises the scale of the problem and decides to take the honey badger under control. No, but catching a honey badger is extremely difficult. It is almost impossible to lure it into a trap repeatedly if it has already once escaped from one. It is capable of bypassing poisons if they are poorly disguised. It is smart, cautious, and incredibly resilient. Shooting is possible, but in hard-to-reach areas, it is extremely difficult and costs a lot. The history of biological control knows many cases where an introduced species turned out to be scarier than the problem it was called to solve. Mongooses, brought to the Caribbean islands to fight rats, destroyed local birds, reptiles, and small mammals. While with the rats, they only partially managed, because rats lead a nocturnal lifestyle and mongooses a diurnal one. The cane toad in Australia, already mentioned above, long time ago became a classic of this genre. One can remember other examples. The European starling in North America multiplied to 300 million individuals after only 60 birds were released in New York in 1890. The scheme is always one and the same. A small beginning, rapid adaptation, explosive growth of population, and complete impossibility of control. Ecologists and biologists call such a process invasive pressure. When a new species gets into an environment without natural limiters, it begins to use all available resources without any restraining factors. In Australia, the honey badger would receive ideal conditions: a warm climate, plenty of prey, and an absence of competitors and predators capable of stopping it. This is a ready recipe for ecological catastrophe. Supporters of the idea sometimes object. What if honey badgers are introduced in small numbers and in a strictly limited area under the observation of scientists? Theoretically, it sounds reasonable. But in practice, honey badgers are mobile, know how to overcome barriers, dig under fences, and find exits when no one expects them. Holding a population of wild honey badgers in a closed zone is practically impossible without extremely expensive infrastructure. Furthermore, biologists point out that even partial success of the honey badger in destroying invasive species will not solve the problem. Rabbits, rats, and cats multiply significantly faster than the honey badger is capable of destroying them. One honey badger physically cannot compensate for that volume of predatory pressure that is necessary for a real reduction of the rabbit population on the scale of an entire continent. The mathematics here is cruel. One female rabbit produces up to 50 descendants per year. One female honey badger gives birth to 1 or 2 cubs. So that honey badgers exert real pressure on the rabbit population, many thousands of them will be required. But thousands of honey badgers in Australia? This is already not a biological control instrument, but a full-fledged invasion of a new predator, with unpredictable consequences for the entire ecosystem. There is also an ethical side to the question. A honey badger released in Australia will suffer from unusual conditions, from diseases it has never before encountered, from parasites and pathogens to which it has no immunity. At the same time, it will itself become a carrier of new diseases for local fauna. Biological exchange of pathogens at the contact of two isolated faunas often turns out to be no less destructive than direct predation. All said above does not mean that in the fight against invasive species in Australia, there are no hopes. Scientists are working on more precise tools. Genetic technologies, in particular the technology of directed genetic changes, allow theoretically for the embedding into the rabbit or mouse population of genes reducing their fertility. This is the so-called gene drive. For now, it is at the research stage, but it represents a much more manageable approach than the introduction of a new predator. Also actively developing are programs for the restoration of local predator populations. Quolls, Tasmanian devils, and dingoes in certain zones are all natural regulators evolutionarily linked with the Australian ecosystem. Their restoration and extension of their habitat is a significantly safer path than the introduction of an alien predator from the side. The Tasmanian devil, for example, has already started returning to mainland Australia after nearly a 3,000-year absence. In 2020, a group of individuals was released into a sanctuary in northern New South Wales. The first results are encouraging. A local predator, familiar to the ecosystem, fits into it significantly more gently than any imported species. Successes are also present in work with separate territories. On several small islands at the shores of Australia, it was possible to completely destroy cat and rat populations, after which local species started recovering with a strike-fast speed. This visually shows that with the presence of sufficient resources and isolated territory, traditional methods can work very effectively. But however, scaling them to the entire continent is extremely difficult. Let us return to the honey badger and summarise the hypothesis. The idea to use it in the capacity of a biological weapon against invasive species is born from a clear desire to find a simple solution for a very complex problem. It is human nature to look for one universal remedy against a multitude of ills. But ecosystems do not work according to such logic. They are complex, interconnected, and extremely sensitive to any intervention. A honey badger in Australia, with a high probability, will go through the same path as all previous imported species. First adaptation, then strike-fast spread, then unpredictable consequences, and in the final, a new budget item for the government and a new headache for ecologists. Instead of solving the problem of rabbits, cats, and toads, Australia risks getting yet another aggressive and practically invulnerable predator that will be impossible to take under control. History taught us a very clear lesson. When a human tries to fix one ecological mistake with the help of a new living organism, he almost always commits the next one. The cane toad was imported against beetles, the mongoose against rats. Each time, the logic seemed ironclad. Each time, reality turned out to be much more complicated. Australia already paid a huge price for such experiments and cannot afford itself to repeat them again. How do you think? Is it worth importing the honey badger to Australia? Is there any chance at all to defeat invasive species, or is this battle already lost? Necessarily write your opinion in the comments.